Banging out some good mornings. Starting my morning out. I'm actually gonna squat and bench back and forth. Got the cambered bar here. Takes tension off the shoulders, especially with bench pressing in between. I didn't want any undue stress of having my shoulders pinned back real hard. Good morning's just like a hip hinge exercise. If you have this style of bar, or a buffalo bar, or a duffalo bar made by Chris Duffin, a bent bar works a lot better for this movement just because of the way it kind of sits on your back. So all you're gonna do is take the hips and just continually push them backwards. And then come back up. You can try to, bring them down where you get your head like lower than your hips. It's a nice stretch, but if you have really not done anything like that before, just be really careful. Warm up there, cruise right over the bench. Wow. Whoosh. Normal bench warm up. Chest is actually a little sore. Did some benching earlier this week. One thing that's been effective for me in terms of warm up, two major things, I guess. One would be to push it early a little bit in terms of the intensity. As quick as I can, get to a plate. Get to my exercises. I just got in here. I just walked in here. And I found that always wakes me up. That's my cup of joe, my cup of coffee. The second thing that's been really useful is just to use low repetition. So with the bar, it doesn't matter too much, but now that I got a little bit of weight on here, I'm just gonna do like a rep or two. A lot of times people spend a lot of time on this movement, really like getting warm. It is important to get your body temperature up, get your heart rate up. One of the most important things is that you're just used to the movement, or you're getting your body used to the movement, and that your body's prepped for the load that's on the bar. Do not need a lot of repetitions to get your body ready for that. So even if I was doing like sets of 10 for today, I could technically just do a set of 3 right here if I wanted to, conserve energy for the other sets. There's also a big part of all of this is preference. So if you go to do that and you're like, nah, I didn't like that. I didn't like only doing like 1 to 3 reps on my warm-ups. Don't do it. Do what you feel is feeling better for you. So we just got to 2 plates pretty quick. We go throw some weights on that squat. And I love warming up the squat with morning, so that's why I did the good mornings already. Wow, bang. Mono lift. Jack that height up a little bit. Real easy to adjust. Kind of nice. In terms of my lower body, it's always been important for me to take my time and do very shallow squats for the first couple sets. Then my body warms up. Then I continue to cheat and do more shallow sets. I want to show you guys some of the supplements I've been using. We got some of Nick Bear's stuff over here. Nick Bear, runner, lifter. You guys know him, former military, Savage. Owns this company, BPN. Great company, makes great products. I got to visit their warehouse and their headquarters in Austin, Texas, and it was awesome. Awesome to see it, very inspiring. Nick's amazing. He's done ultra marathons, all kinds of different shit. I think now he's doing, some bodybuilding, or getting ready to do some bodybuilding. This is a carb product. This has what's called a cyclic dextrin in it, and I believe it has some other ingredients as well. Vitamins, minerals, things like that, help keep you hydrated during your workout. But basically the gist of it is these are simple carbohydrates, fast-acting carbohydrates that during your workout, it's gonna be able to fuel you a little bit more, potentially to be able to help you recover from your workouts a little bit better, keep those glycogen stores full, keep the pump going, that kind of thing. I also will use this on my run. I'll use usually 1 scoop of it. If I'm doing like kind of a modest amount of running, if I'm going further, I'll use about 2 scoops of it. 1 scoop is like 20 something grams of carbohydrate, and 2 scoops is like 40, 50, something like that. This is Intraflight. This is an amino acid formula. I use this as well. That's what's got in it right there. Amino acids have been shown to be pretty effective. I've used them over the years. I've probably used these things I've used some combination of this stuff since way back in the day. With T-Nation, they made a product called Surge. I'm very keen on branched chain amino acids, essential amino acids more recently. My zest for doing this and making these shakes and stuff comes and goes, but it's important for me now because I'm doing double days with my training. And then this guy right here, this is from my brand, Within You. This is a hydration product. It also has some aminos in it as well. And this is a fruit punch one that tastes delicious. Has a good amount of sodium in it. And that sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, all these things are going to help you hold on to the water that you're bringing into the system, which is really important. So you can drink water, but sometimes water can dilute you and can actually dehydrate you. So you need electrolytes as well, especially for those of you that like lower carbohydrate diets, because it's a carbohydrate, it helps hydrate you. And the carbohydrates, they need water. That's kind of what they stick to. That's why sometimes when someone does a keto diet, they're like, I lost 7 pounds. They lost that weight mainly because they lost some water weight initially. We're gonna need some knee sleeves. I need some wrist wraps. Throw some pants on too. Yeah. Throw some briefs on too. Let's really get into some cheating. Sometimes during the warm-up, I like to challenge myself a bit. Normally my grip's out here. Just gonna go a little closer just to make the lift a little different. You'll notice I'm gonna go with a thumbless grip. Don't recommend that, but when I'm going without wrist wraps, sometimes I'll do that. Do a thigh grip. That feels pretty good. Go to a quota. Got some NFL playoffs later today. I'm excited for that. Love watching football. I have a podcast after this. And also my daughter has a volleyball game tomorrow. So I have to flip-flop my hard running that was supposed to be tomorrow. I got to do that today. So that's going to take me longer. So I need to figure out how to get home in order to watch some of the playoffs today. But first things first, got to train. Throw on a lifting belt, get a little support. People ask, when should you put a lifting belt on? As soon as possible. Put it on a little earlier than you think you need it, okay? Put your belt on a little earlier than you think you need it. You can deadlift 315, put your belt on at 225. You can squat 405, put your belt on after you did 2 plates. Maybe you're gonna do 275 or 315. Again, I mention this all the time, but this guy right here is very much responsible for a lot of strains in the lower back and a lot of just overall stress and tension on the lower back. So I really advise people to wear a belt when they bench as well. You can go raw and you can do all that stuff, and that can be great, and that can help build additional strength. But you're not going to find people that are incredibly strong that are incredibly weak without their lifting belt. You understand what I mean? So like if someone deadlifts 800 pounds in a lifting belt, it's not like they can't budge 600 off the ground. Same thing by the same token with straps. Somebody that can pull 800 pounds in a deadlift with straps isn't somebody that is going to really struggle again with 600 pounds without straps. The extra gear, the extra reinforcement, I know that I sell this stuff, so you're like, yeah, sure. I'm just sharing information with you, and if you're convinced of it and you believe in what I'm saying, then go for it and give it a try. And I think you can find out more for yourself. World record attempt. Even though it's not a big jump, we're gonna go to a quarter at least here. Just mention you guys, my lower body takes a little longer for me to warm up than my upper body. I could walk in here cold and bench 315 very easily, but to squat it, that wouldn't feel so good. There's some wear and tear, that happens from running. It's like an accumulative effect that you'll feel sometimes, like in this area here. Kind of just feel it everywhere, but like it does make my legs and my back feel weak, fragile almost. And my back and legs aren't fragile. They're strong, they're fine. But I'm in such conditioned state, I'm doing so many things that often when I go to train, I'm actually feel like deconditioned, if that makes sense. I sometimes will feel not as strong because of the amount of training, almost like overtrained. I don't want to say overtrained because I feel it's appropriate. I feel like what I'm doing is appropriate for what I'm doing now. I just sometimes will take some of that boof off the top because I ran 16 miles 2 days ago, 11 miles yesterday. I definitely think amino acids are at least worth a try for people. More of the modern information is essential amino acids, EAAs, over BCAAs. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain the reasons because I don't really know them, but that's what I know. It shifted a couple years ago from branch chain to essential amino acids. Essential amino acids, essentially, there's more variation of amino acids. I think there's 8 amino acids as opposed to with branch chain, I want to say there's only like maybe 4. So there's some small differences there, but the gist of it is you get more variation of amino acids when you take in essential amino acids. Furthermore, whatever the research says or whatever is going on with any of it, I think it's just nice to get hydration in during your training. So if you find one that tastes good, you're going to end up probably drinking more than you normally would if you just had water. In addition to that, most essential amino acids that are out there are going to also have electrolytes in there. It's undeniable that being more hydrated for training is going to help, and really trying to, at all costs, avoid dehydration. Dehydrated, you're going to be weaker. I've always loved box squatting. Gives me a nice target to hit every single time. Something I've just grown accustomed to. Still trains and strengthens my legs. These are the slingshot wrist wraps. I use a variety of wrist wraps, but mainly these. Sometimes I'll wear the gangsta wraps, like to wrap that wrist, catch a little bit of the fist, make that wrist nice and stable. You know, do your best to not be foolish with your training. If you have an injury, there's a lot of ways to address it, and one way to address it is to put a little bit of equipment on. Look into some wrist wraps, elbow sleeves. Your elbow's been bugging you for a while, get some elbow sleeves. Knees been bugging you for a while, get some knee sleeves. Knee sleeves, elbow sleeves, they're gonna provide warmth. They're also gonna provide something called kinesthetic awareness, which is you bust your finger and they can't really do much for a busted finger, and they give you like a little cast. Or let's say you cut your finger. Well, your finger still might be like functional and you still might be able to use it for certain things like picking your nose and picking your butt and stuff like that. But when you have a cast on there, it's a good reminder to your body like, hey, there's something's wrong in this area. And so you're gonna use this area differently. The same thing happens when we compress a muscle. When you have a compressed muscle, rather than you registering it as being injured because it's got a cast on it, it's quite the opposite. A compressed muscle is a stronger muscle. So when you put an elbow sleeve on, I just advise you just to at least try one out one time, or throw some wrist wraps on and crank them down a bit to where your hands turn different color. This feels powerful. You might not even realize that. You put a belt on that fits properly, tighten it up a bit. If you just kind of bend down like you're gonna do a movement, you're like, oh, interesting. So it just makes you feel stronger. There's a lot of other shit you can do if you have some injuries. I'll show you guys some of that. Probably gonna try to do some sets with my feet up for today just to mitigate any back stuff. My back feels good, I feel fine, and I want to keep it that way. Putting your feet down on the bench is one of the reasons why the bench press is a culprit of giving you some extra back stress. So for most of the sets today, try to keep those feet up. Every little thing is all part of it. You want to gain muscle, but you want things to be fast. It doesn't work that way. You want to be strong, but you don't want it to take time. It doesn't work that way. Being in good shape and trying to get yourself to be like in the best shape of your life is a full-time job, with steroids, without steroids, with other performance enhancing drugs, without other performance enhancing drugs. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness, it takes a good, strong mindset. It'll take everything you got. It'll take a lot. It'll take a lot of continued growth, a lot of research. Every once in a while, some people kind of just got it, but even when someone's just got it, they got to keep it. Eventually, anyone that's in good shape, that starts out in good shape, they're going to have to find time, make time, learn. They're going to have to eventually evolve into somebody that takes more time with their diet. And you know, it's easy to point to other people and say, oh, that guy's genetics, but we've had so many people on the podcast in the past, and we found out that I've actually never seen it before. I've never seen it just be like genetics. I've never seen it in one person just be genetics. Now, something like height is a different thing, right? If someone's 6'10", then they're just born 6'10", but they'll have to figure out what to do with that 6'10", just like you might have to figure out with your ability to play the piano a little bit better than other people when you were 7 years old, or whatever it might be. It's easy to kind of look at other people and think they got it easier because of A, B, or C. I'm about 6 feet tall. I've been over 200 pounds since I was a kid. So you might think like, I'm smaller, I'm this, I'm that. Being smaller could be an advantage. You can go run, you can go find something that lends itself to being a smaller person. Or you can stick it out in here and take your time and learn how to gain some size. We're gonna lift with some chains. It's gonna be about 50 pounds of chains per side. The chains help to accommodate resistance. The weight is gonna be lighter at the bottom and heavier at the top. For me, with my running right now, I really feel that this is a really smart choice for me to keep my body a little bit more unloaded in those compromised positions in the bottom. I wanna stay strong, I wanna stay healthy, I wanna feel good. But those of you that wanna get the feel of lifting heavy without it beating the fucking shit out of you, bands and chains is where it's at. Weights are lighter at the bottom where you're most compromised in any of these positions. The deadlift, squat. Deadlift, you can even do like a reverse band, or you could do it on squat too, or bench. Bench, you can also wear a slingshot, which I'll be wearing a little bit later today. Reverse band squat is another great way of doing. It's weird if you go against bands or against chains, or if you have the bands helping you, it does the same thing in some weird way. What? How is this possible? I don't know. I didn't make up the rules. I didn't make up gravity, but it's the way it works. But those things can be really effective, and they can also just give you a ton of confidence. Like if you could go in let's say you can deadlift 315. That's your best deadlift. You've never been able to pull, 3 plates and a quarter, and 4 plates seem so far away for you. You could set up a reverse band deadlift in a rack, and you can deadlift 405 for the first time. Louis Simmons used to refer to it as the future method. You're doing weights that hopefully you'll be able to handle in the future. Now you can get carried away with that and hook the fucking band to the ceiling and shit and pull like 9 plates, but that's not anything you're gonna be able to do in the future. You want it to probably represent something that's within about 10% of your reach. Again, if you can currently do 315, then doing 365 would be good. But if you start doing like 455, 500, and you're only a 315 puller, it's probably just kind of a complete ego thing. But it's a great way to get these weights in your hands, to feel these weights, and to feel that pressure and to feel that heaviness at the top of the lift. So even on a reverse band deadlift, the weight should almost be 100% you when you get to the top. So the band is going to be assisting you on the way up, but once you get to about your knees, now it's all you versus that weight. And now you get to stand there and take that picture for Instagram with 4 or 5 plates. Same thing with the slingshot, same thing with a reverse band bench press or reverse band squat. I'll be over here where it's safe. All this shit takes time. Takes time to do it all. Takes time to put it all together. You may have heard people in the past say there's no easy way to do things that are difficult. I would change that a little bit for myself. My perspective is you can't really shortcut things that just take a long time naturally. They just take a long time regardless. Regardless of what you do or how you do it, they just take a long time. And I think performance enhancing drugs are a great example of that. Because people, they get really tied up in their head about the morals of it all. But I'll tell you that if you think that it's gonna fast track you somewhere, it can make things faster, but it's still a long road, still a long journey. Let's say you were to take some performance enhancing drugs, hypothetically, say you did 20 weeks worth of it, and let's say you got yourself in good shape. In that 20-week span, that's a long time. That's a couple months worth of work, first of all. Secondly, now you're in the position of, and then what? Because you already played that card. You don't have another thing that's similar to the PED card to play again. You already upped your ante, your game, whatever it is. You got somewhere a little faster than maybe you would have if you were, well, definitely than you would have if you were trying to do things naturally. But then you also end up in the same position regardless of whether you did so naturally or whether you did so with performance enhancing drugs. You end up in the same exact spot, which is, and then what are you going to do? You got yourself in shape for this show. You got yourself in shape for these pictures. You got yourself in shape for your wedding. And then what? What's it going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What's it going to look like? What you going to be doing? Those are all things to think about, all things to consider. Regardless, it's going to take a lot of time, is what I'm trying to tell you. These are just some prototype knee sleeves. We're going to be making some stuff. This is our gangsta sleeve. This is our sleeves that are like 9 millimeters thick, illegal for competition. I like my sleeves to be a little bit easy to get on, nothing too crazy. been doing this for a long time. I can feel like the proper inputs. This feels good. Feels like I could do a little more weight. I'm gonna do this weight again. If it feels about similar or feels anything even better, I'll put a little bit more weight on, but this feels appropriate. When you're in your workout and you're working up and you're feeling good, don't always just take that as you gotta do more. Sometimes that's like the perfect spot and you don't always need more weight. You might need a couple extra sets with that weight because that's gonna really give the input. It's gonna ingrain into the central nervous system and into your body that you know how to lift properly with X amount of weight rather than just going right to that next plate and then doing a lift that has improper form and ingraining poor habit. It's one of the reasons why many years ago in boxing, they used to identify that some athletes had what they called sparring partner syndrome. A sparring partner of Manny Pacquiao had a very difficult and getting better, but Manny Pacquiao kept getting better and better and better. It's because he was able to fight these guys at 80%, 90%. He didn't have to go 100, but they were always trying to go 100. They were going hard and their technique would suffer. They didn't have the same level of conditioning and so forth. You have to be prepared for whatever it is you're about to do next in your training cycle. That is something that you should hold on to and try to remember forever. You want good quality reps, not necessarily perfect reps, but as many good quality reps as you can build up over time. Tendency a lot of times is go plate, but is this gonna be heavier with this 10 pounds on each side? So now, if I perform this well, and I feel like I got another set in me, maybe I will trade this out for a 45-pound plate. May I borrow your lift-off skills, sir?
Go! Up, up, out, release! Good. All the way through.
I felt like plenty of stimulus on the squat, so I'm gonna actually reduce the weight and do double the reps. Do like a set of 6 here or something. If you watch any videos online, YouTube stuff of influencers and various people on Instagram and so forth talking about hypertrophy and talking about, gaining some size and potentially even getting stronger to some degree. Most of the research kind of points to if you're doing reps and sets like a bodybuilder, depending on how hard you push your sets, but generally recognized as not a bad idea to about 3 sets. Sometimes it's like light, medium, heavy, and in that case you might want a 4th set just to get a little extra volume, especially when it comes to the main exercise. I guess the rep range could vary quite a bit, but I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 15 reps seems to be like a sweet spot. With those kind of weights, that doesn't represent a huge percentage of your 1 rep max. However, it's a substantial amount of your 1 rep max. And what really kind of shows up time and time and time again is this idea that over time, you have to push a little harder. That's why Coach Greg always talks about going harder each day, lifting a little bit more, doing an extra set, doing an extra rep, changing the stimulus of the movement, maybe potentially adding some tempo to a squat or to a bench press where you previously weren't lifting that slow, but you're utilizing the same weight to get a slightly different result because you're prescribing the exercise to take a little bit longer time. The whole point in bringing this up to you is that these things, wrist wraps, elbow sleeves, knee sleeves, a lifting belt, all these things can be very, very important in your journey because it takes about 10 years to get the body that you want. Your fastest and best gains are gonna come in the first couple years. You're gonna have 2 different first couple years. You have a time that you started lifting, and then there's also a time where you were enlightened with more information. You had an enlightening period where you now are training with knowledge. So there's training without knowledge, then there's training with knowledge, and even training without knowledge in the beginning, you're gonna have some accelerated progress because everything is new to you. You would gain strength by going outside and picking up rocks and having a construction job over the summer and get more muscular as a 16-year-old kid that never lifted anything before. Over time, it becomes more complicated. We gotta figure out how to load that wheelbarrow up a little bit more. In the gym, we're gonna need more weight. We're gonna need supersets. We're gonna need new stimulus. we're going to need to put a certain amount of stress and demand on the body. And because we're putting that stress and demand on the body, it doesn't matter if you are a weaker athlete or if you're a strong athlete, these things are still advisable to wear because you're going to be able to actually lift more. You're going to be able to lift more a little bit safer because these items can help you with some general wear and tear. And I'm not saying you have to wear them, and I'm not saying no one's ever built a good body without them, but go back and look into the archives of powerlifting even. Go back and look at, Ronnie Coleman. Go back and look even further than that when they didn't really have much equipment, and you may see people like Arnold and people from that time period at least wearing a lifting belt. That'll blow out your butthole. Today probably took about 30 minutes just to get into the workout, but then the workout itself only took about 30 minutes, so that's not too bad. But some days, if I'm trying to stimulate a squat, I just might start out on a belt squat or something like that. Then I might walk backwards with the sled for 10 minutes. I might walk forward with the sled for 10 minutes and be done. I've learned that when there's like a little hiccup in the system as you're doing some of your movements, it's a nice idea to kind of stop and kind of work your way through those movements a little bit more. So you saw me kind of stop on that one and I just held it. I knew still safely I was going to lock it out. Just like you're trying to erode that little error in your system. Got some running to do later today. Storm out there is pretty wild. I'm actually kind of hoping that it just dissipates a little bit. I actually love to run in the rain, but it's rainy and windy, and I have a little faster pace type of thing I'm supposed to do today. I'm supposed to do like 7-minute mile pace for 3/4 of a mile, and I got 12 sets of that. If it is raining later today, I will call an audible, and I'll actually just push that workout till tomorrow, because if something's gonna really like kind of put a thorn in your side or frustrate you, I learned that rather than just trying to push through it and be frustrated, you're better off just trying to like postpone something. If you can. You have the luxury of being able to push something back or switch it around a little bit, call a slight audible, even though you're kind of disappointed you didn't get to do exactly what you wanted. I found it really useful for me in my life to be able to call those audibles as needed. Strength is never weakness, weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.